There's a strange kind of silence that fills the house when you get home too late for the world to care. That was my norm lately. Another brutal shift, another round of rotating surgeries, another drive home through blinking traffic lights and empty intersections. Being an anesthesiologist isn't glamorous, no matter what TV says. It's a lot of responsibility and not a lot of rest. By the time I dropped my bag at the door and slumped onto the couch, it was nearly midnight. I didn't even bother turning on the lights. The glow from the TV and my phone screen was enough. I didn't want to think. I didn't want to process anything. I just wanted the world to shut up. Out of habit, I opened Instagram. I wasn't really looking for anything. It was muscle memory. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Mindless stories, filtered faces, beach *TS babies. Then bam. Jamie. My wife. In a rooftop infinity pool somewhere tropical. Bikini, cocktail, wind in her hair. Perfect lighting. The kind of photo that gets attention, and she knew it. Captioned with, when business and beaches meet, face blowing kiss sun #conference vibes #Loskabus life. It took me a second to even register it. I blinked. Stared at the image like it had appeared out of nowhere. My heart didn't start racing right away, not until I looked closer. In the background, behind her glass of tequila sunrise and that curated smile, there was a reflection. It wasn't just the sunset or the water. No, it was a man. Clear enough to recognize body language, even if not his face. He was leaning in, close to her neck, too close. His lips looked like they were pressed just below her ear. At first, I didn't move. Just stared. My body was frozen, but my mind suddenly caught fire. I tried zooming in, tilting my phone, looking for some other explanation. Maybe it was a stranger standing behind her, caught mid-laugh. Maybe he wasn't touching her. Maybe it was a trick of the light. But the longer I looked, the clearer it became. It wasn't just a moment. It was an *Macy. Something I hadn't felt from her in months. I sat up straight, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. Jamie had told me she was in Los Cabos for a professional conference, a marketing summit for travel professionals. She worked for a boutique agency that curated luxury getaways. The trip made sense. She even gave me the whole itinerary over breakfast before she left. Panels, networking dinners, guest speakers, all of it. And now here she was, cocktail in hand, poolside, and not alone. I took a *T. My fingers hesitated before tapping out a message. I told myself to be calm, not to jump to conclusions, but that knot in my chest was already tightening. I sent the image with a simple question. Who's this guy behind you? She replied fast. Too fast. Jamie, what guy? Me, the one kissing your neck in the glass. Jamie, oh God, Garrett. That's just a colleague. It's an awkward angle. A minute later. Jamie, you really need to stop being so paranoid. Seriously. This is why I hate sharing anything with you. I just stared at the screen. No apology. No explanation beyond a vague colleague. She was dismissing it like I just accused her of double-dipping in the salsa. Then she flipped the script. Jamie, this obsession with control, it's not healthy. I'm out here trying to build something for my career and you're dissecting pictures like a jealous ex. This is exactly why I need space sometimes. I didn't respond right away. I needed to breathe. Needed to think. But my mind was spinning now, racing backward through every weird moment of the last 6 months. No, scratch that last year. The signs had been there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. Jamie had been traveling more often. Retreats, client pitches, site tours, always with new stories, new people I never met. Her phone used to sit face up on the counter, notifications blinking away. Now it was face down, always locked. She took calls in the bathroom, always with the fan on. But I had chalked it up to the pandemic shakeup or her finding herself again or whatever excuse I needed to believe that we were fine. That she was still mine and I was still hers. Now with this photo, all of that looked like theater. I thought about texting her back. Something measured. Something calm and adult and rational. But what was the point? She wasn't explaining. She was deflecting. Blaming me. And the worst part? A small part of me was already trying to talk myself out of it. Telling myself maybe it really was just a weird angle. Maybe I really was being controlling. Maybe I was the problem. But that photo. That damn photo wouldn't let go. It wasn't just the kiss or the near kiss. It was her expression. I know Jamie. I know the way she smiles when she's genuinely happy, the way she squints a little when she laughs. And in that photo, she looked free. Relaxed in a way she hadn't been with me in months. I locked my phone and tossed it across the couch. For a long time, I just sat there, my hands curled into fists. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something had changed. And no matter how hard she tried to downplay it, something real and solid and foundational had cracked the moment that image hit my screen. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the AC kicking in. The house felt unfamiliar. Like it didn't belong to us anymore. Like I was living in someone else's story. She messaged again around 2 a.m. "Jamie, I love you. But you need to stop assuming the worst. Trust me or this won't work." There it was. A final push. Guilt-tripping me into silence. I didn't answer. I wasn't sure what I believed anymore. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about just a photo. That reflection had only made visible what had been lurking underneath for months. This wasn't the beginning. This was the confirmation. And I couldn't unsee it. After the photo, things didn't blow up like you might expect. There was no screaming match, no dramatic confrontation, no slammed doors. Just silence. And in that silence, things started to settle into place, not in the comforting way a snow globe settles after you shake it, but more like puzzle pieces falling into a shape I didn't want to see. I didn't push Jamie again about the photo. I let her win that round, at least on the surface. But inside, something had turned. A switch flipped. I couldn't stop replaying everything I'd ignored over the last year. It started with the little things. Always does, right? Jamie used to leave her laptop open on the kitchen island. I never went through it because I never had a reason to. Same with her phone. She used to laugh at people who needed passwords for everything. Said, if you've got nothing to hide, what's the point? But somewhere along the line, that changed. One day I reached for her laptop to look up a recipe and it asked for a password. I asked her about it and she said something about syncing to her work account's corporate policy, she told me. Maybe it was. But that was the first red flag I filed away. Then there were the emergency overnights. Jamie had always been social, always had her tight-knit circle of marketing friends. But suddenly there were a lot of late dinners, a lot of missed calls. She used to text me little updates during the day, memes, dog videos, thinking of you, emojis. Then it became radio silence until after 10 p.m. If I asked where she was, she'd reply with stuff like, out with Sasha, decompressing, or at the office, crazy deadline. Sometimes I'd walk past the bathroom while she was on a call and she'd fall silent the second she heard my steps. Once, I heard her laugh in the soft, fluttery way I hadn't heard in a long time, not with me at least. When I walked in, she was already wiping off her makeup, phone face down on the sink, acting like she'd just finished brushing her teeth. But I brushed that off too. Told myself I was being paranoid. I even remember the first time I really knew something was wrong and still said nothing. It was a Friday night. I'd worked a long double and got home expecting to eat leftovers and crash. But I walked into the kitchen and saw 2 wine glasses in the sink. One of them had lipstick on the rim. I hadn't had wine in weeks and Jamie was supposedly out with coworkers that night. When I asked her the next day, she said Sasha came over for a quick chat before heading to a dinner reservation. We didn't feel like going out, she said with a shrug. It was just girl talk. I wanted to believe her. But when I texted Sasha later that week to say thanks for looking out for Jamie, she replied, I haven't seen her in forever. That was the moment I felt my stomach drop. And yet I didn't say anything. I didn't accuse. I just let it slide, thinking maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe Sasha had forgotten. Maybe. It's incredible what your brain can rationalize when your heart doesn't want to believe what's right in front of you. Then came the social media shift. Jamie had always posted casually birthday brunches, sunsets, the occasional humble brag about a work milestone. But over the last 6 months, her page started looking like a curated lifestyle account. Posing in lounges with perfectly arranged cocktails, slow-motion hair flips on the beach, hashtag self-love captions with deep quotes from authors I knew she'd never read. All solo sh*ts. Always framed to look spontaneous but too perfect not to be staged. I used to comment on her posts, inside jokes, emojis, damn, you're beautiful. She stopped replying. Eventually, she stopped liking any of my comments at all. One day I asked, half joking, hey, am I banned from your digital life now? She smirked and said, I'm trying to grow a professional presence. Keep it classy. I told myself I was overreacting. Again. But the more I thought about it, the more it didn't sit right. She started dressing differently too. Nothing wrong with that, of course. But it was noticeable, suddenly everything was more fitted, more styled. Hair done just to go get coffee. Expensive perfumes spritzed before supposedly running errands. I'd compliment her and she'd just say, you're sweet, like I was a stranger who held a door open for her. Conversations got shorter. She stopped asking about my day. When I'd tell her about work, especially the hard days, her eyes would glaze over. The woman who used to sit on the kitchen counter listening to every hospital horror story now looked at me like I was speaking another language. We were in the same house, but it felt like I was living with someone who'd already moved out. And the biggest red flag of all? I started to feel guilty for noticing. That's what stuck with me the most. It wasn't just the shift in her behavior, it was how I stopped trusting my own instincts. Every time something felt off, she'd find a way to make it my fault. You're too serious. You're always tired. You've been emotionally distant for months. You're acting jealous over nothing. She said those things with this cool confidence, like she was reading from a script she'd rehearsed. And I believed her. Because what else could I do? We'd had our bumps, everyone does. Two professionals in demanding careers trying to maintain Macy and connection during and after a pandemic? Of course there'd be rough patches. I told myself she just needed space. Time. Maybe she was going through a phase. Maybe therapy would help. Maybe if I worked fewer hours, took her on a surprise trip, reconnected. But then came the moment that shook me to my core. She was out again, another last-minute invite, this time to some gallery opening. I stayed in, made dinner for one. Around 10 p.m. I heard a strange buzzing in the kitchen. It wasn't my phone, it was hers. She'd left her tablet charging next to the coffee maker. At first, I didn't even look. But the notifications kept coming. Eventually, curiosity, or maybe just instinct, got the better of me. And there it was. Hope you're not too sore from earlier. Winking face, can't stop thinking about the pool. You looked so damn good in that blue dress tonight. Made it really hard to keep things professional. Smirking face. Messages. Dozens. All from the same name I didn't recognize, first name only, no photo. And all suggestive. Flirty. An asterisk mate. Casual, like this was just normal for them. I didn't open the tablet. I just stared at the lock screen and felt my whole body go cold. When Jamie got home an hour later, she kissed me on the cheek, told me the gallery was fine but overpriced, and headed straight to the shower. That was when it hit me, I wasn't just losing her. I was already gone. But I said nothing. I didn't mention the messages. Didn't mention the wine glasses, the laughter behind the bathroom door, the forgotten lies. I didn't even bring up the photo again. I just nodded. Because now I needed something more than suspicion. I needed truth. Undeniable, irrefutable, gut-wrenching truth. And I had a feeling I was about to find it. A week after Jamie returned from Los Cabos, I did something I never thought I'd do. I broke the rules, the unspoken agreements, the moral lines we pretend we'll never cross in a relationship. I had spent months suffocating under the weight of uncertainty, second-guessing my instincts, letting her paint me as paranoid. But after everything, after the photo, the messages, the coldness, I wasn't just searching for peace of mind anymore. I needed confirmation. I needed proof. So I hired someone. I didn't tell anyone, not my friends, not my colleagues, not even my brother. I wasn't ready to say it out loud that I thought my wife might be living a second life while I was too busy intubating patients to notice. I found a digital forensics consultant online, mid-range pricing, discreet, no questions asked. A guy named Sean who talked more like a plumber than a hacker. Direct, no drama. You got access to anything she's logged into before? He asked during our first call. I thought for a second. Then I remembered the old iPad. The one she used for Netflix and Pinterest before it got too slow. She hadn't touched it in over a year. It was buried in a drawer beneath some old tax documents. Yeah, I said. I've got something. He gave me a drop-off location. 48 hours later, I got an email with a secure login and a password. I clicked in and braced myself. What I found was like discovering an entire world I wasn't supposed to see. The tablet had still been linked to Jamie's cloud account, something she must have forgotten about. That meant everything synced, messages, notes, emails, photos, even cached passwords. There were over 1,000 images stored. Most were harmless, **TS of outfits, memes, random Pinterest recipes. But buried inside were folders. Dozens of them. Some dated back months. And most contained pictures of her and the same man. At first, I didn't recognize him. Tall, silver streak in his hair. Always dressed business casual. Expensive watch. Way too familiar in the way he touched her. An arm around her waist, hand resting on her thigh, head leaning into hers during selfies. Then I realized who it was. Her boss. The one she used to call intense but brilliant. The same guy she said was grooming her for leadership at the agency. The one she had supposedly been traveling with strictly for work. I'd met him once, briefly, at a company fundraiser. He shook my hand, said all the right things, looked me in the eye. Now I couldn't stop replaying that handshake in my head. There were photos of them in restaurants, in bars, in hotel rooms, some taken by others, some mirror selfies in bathrobes. They smiled like teenagers, unbothered and free, like they didn't have anyone to answer to. And then there were the texts. She hadn't just deleted them from her phone. She'd been using a third-party messaging app, but the tablet had backups of the notification previews. Enough to piece things together. You leave Sunday or Monday, counting down the hours, already smirking face. He has no clue, like none. I could be 10 feet away from him texting you. Part of me wants to tell him just to see the look on his face. 3 more months and I'll be out of this house. It's just logistics now. There were dozens like that. Conversations about lying to me, about how boring I'd become, about how I was married to the hospital, and she was done being someone's invisible support system. I scrolled through each one like I was pulling out bricks from a wall that had once been our marriage. I remember closing the tablet and just sitting in the dark for a while. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just disconnected. My body felt like it was in a different room from my mind, like I was floating somewhere above myself, watching this moment unfold. Because this wasn't suspicion anymore. This wasn't a hunch or paranoia or insecurity. This was fact. Jamie had been living 2 lives. In one, she was the charming, career-driven wife, posting tastefully filtered pictures of lattes and sunset walks. In the other, she was someone else entirely, slipping away on business trips and building a secret life with her boss. And I was footing the bill, covering the silence, doing the emotional labor of pretending we were okay. I spent the next few hours saving everything. *TS, photo backups, text logs. I labeled and timestamped them, not because I was planning a confrontation just yet, but because I needed to know it was real. My mind kept trying to rewrite the story, to soften the edges. Maybe this was a phase. Maybe she felt lost. Maybe we were both to blame. But the evidence didn't lie. She wasn't lost. She was found, just not by me. And the part that gutted me more than anything? She wasn't even hiding it well. Not really. It wasn't careful. It wasn't meticulous. It was lazy, arrogant, like she didn't think I'd ever look. Like she believed I was too naive, too trusting, too wrapped up in my own world to ever notice hers unraveling. And honestly, she wasn't wrong. I had let it happen. Let her convince me I was paranoid. Let her build a world inside our home that I had no key to. I was so busy trying to be the man she could count on. I never stopped to ask if she was someone I could count on, too. That night, I didn't sleep again. I just walked the house, room to room, touched the picture frames, the souvenirs from old vacations, the grocery lists with her handwriting still on them. Everything felt like a prop in a show that had already ended. I thought about waking her up, about holding the tablet over her and saying, "Explain this." I thought about yelling, about packing a bag, about driving to a hotel and letting her wake up to an empty bed and a note. But I didn't, because something in me shifted that night. Not with rage, not with heartbreak, with resolve. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of watching me fall apart. She had already stolen my time, my trust, my peace. I wasn't about to give her my dignity too. I'd find a lawyer. I'd move money. I'd protect myself. But first I would play along. Just a little longer. Let her think she was still winning. Because the next time I acted, it wouldn't be an emotional outburst. It would be strategy. Once I knew the truth, there was no going back. But I didn't blow up her world. Not yet. I didn't storm into our bedroom with the tablet. I didn't scream or cry or beg her to explain herself. I didn't even tell her I knew. I just watched. The morning after I discovered everything, Jamie was back to her usual routine. Standing in the kitchen in her robe, sipping coffee, scrolling on her phone like the world was fine. She smiled at me, even kissed me on the cheek like nothing had changed. And maybe to her, nothing had. But for me, everything was different now. I was no longer wondering. I was preparing. I became quiet, focused. I started my own kind of surgery, not on a patient, but on our life. Step 1 was the finances. I began untangling everything we shared. joint checking accounts, savings, credit cards. I knew which ones she had access to and which ones she didn't. I started rerouting my paycheck into a personal account she didn't know existed. I froze the credit card we shared and told her it had been flagged for suspicious activity. She grumbled but didn't question it too much. I also pulled my name from anything I didn't want attached to her future damage, subscriptions, automatic bills, anything with a shared login or paper trail. Little things, but they added up. Step 2 was the paperwork. I scheduled a consultation with a divorce attorney. A woman named Erin, smart, precise, and a little terrifying in a good way. She didn't ask for drama. She asked for documentation. I gave her everything, the photos, the text logs, the calendar overlaps. She read silently, occasionally nodding, then looked at me and said, "You're doing the right thing. You're not crazy." I almost broke down just hearing that. It felt like someone finally snapped me out of the gaslighting fog I'd been living in for a year. Erin helped me draft everything quietly. We built a timeline, a strategy. I gave her permission to begin the formal filing process, but I didn't want Jamie served yet. I wasn't ready for the explosion. Not while she still thought she was in control. Because here's the thing. I wanted her to walk right into her next move, thinking I was still the same oblivious husband she'd grown comfortable lying to. And sure enough, she did. A few days later, Jamie mentioned another trip. Bali this time. A luxury content campaign for the travel agency. It's just a few influencers and staff, she said over dinner like it was the most normal thing in the world. Our director wants me there in person to coordinate the launch. Of course he does, I thought. I didn't flinch. I didn't question it. I just nodded and said, "That's exciting." She looked up from her plate, a little surprised. "You're okay with it?" "Why wouldn't I be?" I replied and took a sip of my water. It was the best acting job of my life. The day she left, she wore a white sundress and heels. Hair curled, nails done, suitcase packed to bursting. She kissed me goodbye at the door. I smiled and kissed her back. "You sure you don't mind?" she asked, one last test. "I trust you," I said with a straight face. She beamed. "You're the best." That was the last lie she ever told me to my face. Once her flight took off, I got to work. I called Erin. "She's gone," I said. "Let's do it." The divorce papers were finalized and scheduled for formal delivery. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I created a folder, a digital one and a physical one. It contained everything: photos, *TS, timestamped notes, cloud backups, receipts. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. And I wanted it to be undeniable. I sent a copy to her employer's HR department. I didn't just include the affair. I included expense reports that showed she had billed personal hotel nights to the agency. I cross-referenced dates, matched them to her photos and captions. It wasn't just a relationship, it was a misuse of company resources. Company time. Violations of every clause in that ethics agreement she had signed when she was hired. And then I did something I debated for days before pulling the trigger. I sent the folder, minus the financial parts, to the other man's wife. Her name was Melissa. I only knew that because I remembered Jamie mentioning her once, years ago, when talking about the agency's holiday party. "She's nice but quiet," she'd said. "Doesn't really talk much." I found Melissa on social media, confirmed the name, then sent a direct message. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't dramatic. Just a link, a note, and my contact info in case she wanted to talk. She didn't respond. But she saw it. I saw the read receipt. That night, Jamie uploaded her first Bali post. Her, on a beach in a high-cut swimsuit, drink in hand, laughing mid-turn. The caption read, "Free. Finally remembering who I am, water wave dizzy, #BalaWorkTrip, #self-love." I stared at the photo for a long time. Then I closed the app and slept like I hadn't in months. 2 days later, the formal notice was sent to her email and physical inbox. It was a simple message. "Jamie, you've been served. All necessary documentation and supporting evidence is included. My attorney is copied on this thread. Please do not contact me directly. Garrett." I waited. There was no response that night. But the next morning I woke to an avalanche. Calls. Emails. Texts. At first, she played innocent. "Jamie, Garrett? What is this? What are you doing? Jamie, we can fix this. I don't understand what's happening. Jamie, baby, talk to me." Then came the gaslighting. "Jamie, this isn't what you think. Jamie, you're overreacting. This isn't fair." Then the rage. "Jamie, you had no right to involve my job. Jamie, you ruined my career. Jamie, you think you're some kind of saint? You're not innocent either." But I said nothing. Not a single word. I blocked her number. Forwarded every message to my lawyer. Erin told me later that Jamie tried calling her office directly, demanding a meeting. Erin's assistant politely told her everything would be handled in court. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was playing defense. I wasn't guessing. I wasn't doubting. I wasn't hoping she'd come clean. I was done waiting. And now the silence was mine. Jamie came home to an empty house. No warning. No welcome. Just silence. She had posted her last bikini photo from Bali 12 hours earlier, captioned something about sunsets and transformation. I didn't read it. I'd stopped following her 2 days before her return flight. I didn't want to see another filtered version of her life. I was done watching the performance. She landed early in the morning. I knew because the airline confirmation hit our shared email inbox, something else she forgot to unlink. I imagined her rolling her suitcase through the terminal, confident that her world was still intact. Maybe she expected me to be there waiting, arms crossed but still standing. That would have been the old me. Instead, she stepped into a house that no longer felt like home. Her key still worked, I hadn't changed the locks. Not yet. I didn't want to give her that excuse. I wanted her to walk in unprepared, to feel it hit all at once. The living room was bare. No framed photos. No decorative pillows she'd picked out. No candles or plants or shared clutter. I had boxed it all up, every trace of our life together, and moved it into a rented storage unit 3 towns over. Her belongings were there too, labeled and cataloged in neat, cold rows. A single printed address taped to each box. The message was clear: this part of your life has been archived. On the kitchen counter, I left an envelope with her name written in my handwriting. Inside were 3 things: the official divorce petition, her lawyer's contact information, and a receipt for the storage unit with the access code. That was it. No letter. No note. No personal explanation. I didn't owe her closure. I had already given her more grace than she ever gave me. Later, I found out she stood there for nearly an hour. Just stood in the middle of the living room, looking around like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. She called me 10 times. Left voicemails. Most of them started calm and confused, then spiraled into anger and finally panic. I didn't listen to any of them. Instead, I turned my phone off, made coffee, and drove to the lake. I needed distance from her, from the noise, from the wreckage. I didn't want to be around when she realized she wasn't in control anymore. That evening, she sent an email. The subject line was just my name. Jamie, I don't know what you're doing. I get that you're mad, but this is insane. You don't just erase a marriage like this. We need to talk. You can't just throw everything away. She didn't ask about the evidence. She didn't apologize. She didn't even acknowledge what she'd done. To her, this was still a misunderstanding. A drama I had created by overreacting. A situation she could spin back into her favor with enough charm and deflection. I didn't respond. The next morning, I made it official. I sent copies of the folder, minus the legal documents, to her closest circle. Friends. A few of her family members. Coworkers she'd known for years. I didn't add commentary or rant. I didn't accuse or editorialize. I simply titled the email for the sake of clarity. I didn't do it to destroy her. I did it to clear my name. Because for months, I'd been carrying the weight of being the problem. The distant husband. The insecure partner. The guy who couldn't handle a woman with ambition. And I was done letting her own that narrative. I expected backlash. Instead, I got silence. One by one, people stopped replying to her posts. Unfollowed. Muted. Ghosted. I watched it unfold not out of pettiness, but with a strange sense of vindication. Not joy. Not revenge. Just relief. The truth had been let out into the open like smoke from a sealed room. And then the fallout hit her job. Within a week of the folder landing in HR's inbox, she was placed on internal review. The agency didn't make a public statement, but I knew what was happening behind the scenes. Erin forwarded me the letter from their legal team confirming they'd received and reviewed the documentation. It was cold and formal. 2 days later, Jamie was fired. Not just because of the affair, though that was part of it. It was the misuse of company resources. The blurred lines. The credibility risk to their image. You can sell dream vacations all day long, but nobody wants their brand tied to a scandal. She tried to spin that too. A post appeared on her Instagram. Sometimes doors close for bigger reasons. I'm stepping into a new chapter. Growth can be messy. Seedling broke a heart. The comments were mostly generic. A few hearts. A few people telling her she was strong. But her usual fanfare was gone. Her curated audience had thinned. Some unfollowed. Some stayed quiet. Some just watched like I had, months earlier, trying to make sense of a story that didn't match the version she had sold them. She sent me one last message a few days later. Not a voicemail. Not a call. Just a long email. She told me she had been going through a confusing time. That she never meant to hurt me. That she wanted to talk face to face and rebuild trust. She claimed she was in therapy. That she had deleted his number. That she finally understood what she had done. I didn't believe her. Because the thing about truth is it sticks. It doesn't shift based on who's watching. And nothing in her message sounded like ownership. It sounded like someone who had finally realized they couldn't charm their way out of consequences. I didn't reply. Instead, I moved out of the house a week later. I had already been planning it. A position had opened at a private clinic in Austin, a role with better hours and more freedom. I applied quietly, got the offer, and accepted it without telling anyone but Aaron. It felt clean. Like the first decision I'd made in months that was purely mine. The day I left San Diego, I stopped by the storage unit. Just to check. Jamie's boxes were still there. Untouched. Still taped shut, still labeled in neat Sharpie. I left them alone. She'd get the message. On the drive to Austin, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. But it was a good kind of tired, the kind that comes after surviving a storm and finding shelter. I didn't hate her. Not anymore. But I didn't love her either. Not the person she'd become. Not the version of her who had turned our marriage into a shadow performance and blamed me when the lights flickered. She had wanted freedom. Now she had it. And so did I. It didn't take long before the story leaked. An anonymous blog tied to the travel industry published a piece about a high-profile director's misconduct, citing multiple employee affairs, favoritism, and company funds used for personal trips. *TS from my folder had made it out into the wild, blurred names, but recognizable enough. People connected the dots. Fast. The agency scrambled. The director, the man Jamie had been seeing, was quietly placed on leave, then terminated. But the damage was done. Clients pulled out. A scandal trended for 48 hours online. Jamie's name got mentioned in a viral Reddit thread. Not as the villain, not exactly, but as a cautionary tale.